I want to kind of clear one thing up so people can kind of understand. When you guys make an arrest and there's, let's just call it illegal proceeds or contraband, right? Items associated with contraband, purchased through contraband, you guys legally are allowed to keep the stuff.
Well, ultimately seize it,
right,
and then the judge decides that we can keep the stuff. Yeah, the thought there is that if you commit a felony, and you benefit from that, you use those proceeds to buy something or get something, or you have the money, you don't get to keep it. Bernie Madoff didn't get to keep all the money that he stole from people. So there is a civil forfeiture process, and it's been tailored over the years. But in essence, if we seize $1,000 from a drug dealer, say, what we will do is we give them paperwork, and then there's a hearing to determine whether we had the probable cause to seize the money. And then if the judge says yes, you can hold the money until another forfeiture hearing takes place. So unless the individual decides, you know what, you got me, I'm going to go ahead and sign it over to you, or we come up with some civil agreement where we'll split it. That way we don't have to pay for the money, pay for the cost and the time to get it, and
to hire a lawyer is really the
right,
cost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And neither does the suspect. So
right.
When we see something, whether it is money, whether it is jewelry, whether it is a Corvette, whether
right.
it is whatever.
And we're going to talk about that. That's where we're getting to.
We seized it because you don't get to keep stuff that you got through illegal means.
Right. And when we're talking about the Corvette, the former sheriff, he had tons of billboards. That's not taxpayer money. Right. That's money that's seized really from y'all's efforts, from law enforcement efforts. So it's not like people will you're using taxpayer money and you have to be as fiscally responsible as you can. But that's people get upset about. That ain't it. The money's coming from the people that everybody wants to be arrested to begin with.
Well, there is money for engagement. Everyone's calling for law enforcement to be engaging, and the billboards. I will tell you, while we use forfeited funds to buy it, there is certainly a need, and in the past there has been a use for using even general fund dollars because now the digital billboards can put missing persons up right away. So there may have been times in the past where they used them to be critical. We use them now for putting missing juveniles or wanted individuals up there. So there's certainly a law enforcement purpose for it, and we have the ability to change these billboards within 5 minutes. So there's certainly a value to that. But a lot of that stuff, the beads that we throw at parades, that's seized law enforcement trust fund dollars, and that's used specifically for and earmarked from the Constitution to use that for engagement purposes, to better the relationship between the sheriff's office and citizens.
So the long story is y'all ain't using taxpayer money for all this stuff. People will maybe, general public may think that you guys are going beyond what you're supposed to, but look, that's drug dealer money anyway, guys. Relax. It's really what I'll say.
And it can all be used for that specific
Correct.
Purposes.
Correct.
So
you can't put it in your pocket.
Yeah. And we can't pay salaries for it. We can't buy police cars for it. We have to use it for drug reduction. We have to use it for community engagement, messaging. You'll see this. Sheriff Simmons says, great partnerships, result in safe communities, that sort of thing. So that's the messaging that we get out, and that's by statute how we have to spend those dollars.
So for me, watching the evolution of our prior sheriff to you coming in, there is a lot more engagement. I will immediately say that, and I think it's a great thing because I think that was one of the big detriments with our prior sheriff. But y'all also have this program, and I'm going to mispronounce what it is. It's the Blazer program.
Blazer Academy.
Blazer Academy. There you go.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, I'll tell you briefly how it started. I was really heavy into coaching football, youth league football. I had two boys, and I played, and I figured I could help out. So I'm helping them out, and I realized when I stopped coaching, I realized when I become the sheriff, I'm like, you know what? There was a time when I could get my whole team to take a knee in front of me, and they're paying attention to me. Half the time I talk about football, the other half the time I talk to them about not getting in trouble so you can stay in the team, not getting in trouble so their parents will let them play, and making wise decisions. And for that brief moment, they weren't saying a word because I wouldn't allow them to say a word. Your coach they respect your coach. I had players, I had a principal call me one time and said, hey, this little Johnny here, I want to give his name.
Right.
Little Johnny says only two people he has to listen to, his mom and his coach. His mom can't don't have a phone. I'm calling his coach. I said, put him on the phone. So we took care of that. So now I'm thinking, well, why don't we recreate that here? So I come up with a Blazer Academy. Basically, it's young men, start off young men, 13, 14, 15 years old, and then we would teach them how to be gentlemen. We would teach them some of the things that we learned, some of the unique perspective that we have. We're not recruiting them to be law enforcement officers. What we're telling them is what we see, the cautionary tales that we've heard of, that we've experienced, and it works out very well. In fact, it's the state of Florida program of the year in the entire state of Florida. And we just recently got another George Washington medal that we'll be receiving here in a couple of weeks for the program itself. We're very proud of it. The sheriff's office members are able to teach it because we have some people that have gone through the same hardships. We had one instructor lost his father before he was 10 years old. We had a couple of them that were a little brother, big brothers. They were in that situation where they needed a mentor. And we had one that spent a couple nights in their car with their family, in a short-term homeless type situation. And I've had a few run-ins with law enforcement as a teenager myself. So it's these shared experiences that we can kind of give them and say, hey, there's a future. There's something that there are people relying on you and trusting in you.
How many people do you have in it? How many young men?
We wanted to have about 15. The first class was about 25 because we couldn't tell anyone no. Second class was supposed to be 20, 25. It was 45 because we can't tell. We're not smart enough to tell people no. And then we recently had, ultimately what we wanted to be about 20 kids. And then we are in the middle of the first female edition of the Blazer Academy.
Okay.
So it's brand new.
How did the kids get into it? I mean, how'd that all go down?
They find the way. We haven't really even had to market it very well. We put it out, say we're accepting applications for next year's Blazer Academy or next session's Blazer Academy, and we have partnerships with, you talk about engagement. We engage with a number of people, and they bring kids to us, and they know of people that they're mentoring, and they share this need. They share it with us, and so we're able to help them out. We've partnered with some of our local mentors, and basically we train, teach, mentor, build this relationship with these kids that just is going to continue to build, to pay dividends.
Me being in this position is the same thing as you, the business of crime. Crime is not as clear cut as people may think it is. Crime is not just one day someone wakes up and they're going to be a bad guy, right, that day. It's a little bit more of a development. But to me, one of the star A+ jobs was Rudy Giuliani in New York, essentially cleaning up New York, because I believe in a more total cleanup rather than just high press law enforcement. You can high press law enforcement in a particular area, right, but that may not clean up the area. That's going to clean up for that time. So Giuliani, they called it the broken window policy. If there was a window broken, hey, someone needs to fix the window.
Right.
I would love to see if through your relationships with the other county offices, if we could start doing something like that, because I think that needs to be happening too. Look, we're talking about Aragon Court, how bad it was when you were with the city, right? If the city with the police department at some point in time back then says, listen, let's start cleaning it up. Let's start enforcing everything. Every ordinance that we got on the book, that will cause the area to level up, to rise. And I think that's important. You're doing what you can with the youth that want to be involved. That's saving people from making bad decisions later on. And it's one of these things where once you're in the system, look, man, your name's there. It's hard to get out.
Yeah, we know that's a good point, because we've done a lot of studying on the best way to do this, and again, I ran on it, and I still maintain this: engagement and enforcement. We don't want to forsake enforcement for engagement, but we think that there's an avenue. I'm an optimist. You can have both. You can be the most engaging agency that this state has ever seen, but you can also continue to increase this enforcement. So we talked a bit about engagement. Let me tell you what the enforcement side of that looks like, where these two mesh and these two come together. I created 2 neighborhood specialists. I created 5 neighborhood specialist positions, but I hired 2 right now. And their job is to look at neighborhoods and find out ways where we can, if you see a broken window, who do we contact? Let's have these meetings. So we're partnering with code enforcement a lot more. 2 days ago, I went downstairs. The first time ever the first time we're anywhere of, let me just say that. Mm-hmm. that we have partners. We have Parks and Recreation, code enforcement, county code enforcement, our neighborhood specialists, our community services people in a room together to say, okay, what houses are nuisances in this neighborhood, in that neighborhood? And we work with them. You may have seen it. We use some of our training materials, our what we call our Rook, to help them tear down a house that was a nuisance in the neighborhood. And then we have a couple other ones on our list. These are things that when you couple with our partnerships with our federal authorities, if you recall, I talked about my relationship with federal authorities and the impact that it had on working with DEA on some drug cases that people are coming in. Because, I mean, yeah, we can get a guy off the street here, but he's not bringing the drugs in.
Right.
We need help stop that too. So we combined, again, all of that. In previous administrations, we had stopped all relationships with the federal authorities. So I immediately started that up. The first two things I did was body cameras and start working cooperative with the federal authorities on drug cases specifically. So now we've got partnerships on drugs. We have neighborhood specialists. We have our combined efforts with code enforcement, and so we are starting to look at, hey, let's get individual neighborhoods and let's start getting rid of these nuisances, because you hit it, and it is a broken window thing. If you talk to a neighborhood about what their neighborhood can look like and what they can do, they just don't have to tolerate this type of thing, and we'll do what we can do. And at the end of the next couple of years, we're going to have increased our manpower by 24 police officers, or 24 deputies. We haven't added a deputy in a dozen years. And now all of a sudden in 4 years, we're going to have 24 more deputies. So these are all coming towards this is where this engagement and the enforcement intersect. And I just think there's a bright future here at the scheme.
Yeah, I think it's a total picture view. It's a big picture view of what we're doing for just public safety in large. Public safety for everything.